Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on this YouTube channel, Learn Albanian. As you can tell by the name, this is a channel to teach everyone who is interested in learning to speak and write Albanian. So, for the first video of this channel, I've already introduced the alphabet, pronunciation, its history, how it came to be, the fact that it was derived from the Latin letters used in the ancient Roman times, and the fact that it's had a lot of changes to today, the fact that it's different from other Latin the other alphabets that originated from Latin, etc., etc. You'll have to see that video for this to make sense, or you're going to have trouble with pronunciation. You're going to get confused anyway, because you can't just learn an alphabet in one go. You can just learn how to pronounce something in one go if it's new to you and if you're already used to one or two or several other languages, which is why I would recommend listening to a lot of Albanian, maybe people who speak it, maybe native speakers who know how to pronounce the words, and then it'll become more natural. Because if you don't learn something naturally, you're gonna forget it, trust me. So today we have the themes of verbs jam, to be, and come, have got, in the present simple tense. So the thing about these verbs, the thing that makes them different from every other verb, and the reason why they're the most important verbs in any language and the simplest ones and the ones that you learn first, is not only the fact that they're basic and they have basic meanings, but also the fact that they cannot be used on their own. They need context. Like, for example, if I say I am, unyam, what information do you get from that? I mean, you know that I exist. That's not what I was trying to tell you. Or unkam, I have. What do I have? As you can see, they don't make sense. Also, something about these verbs that you should know is they are what we call irregular verbs, or fori to paregulta, which means that they completely change their forms. They can become unrecognizable. If you just see them in a sentence, you're going to have trouble realizing that, for example, this verb here is the verb yam. Oh, wow. What do they have in common? So this is why you need to learn how these verbs change for every personal pronoun. So yeah, here we go. Also, something else, both of these verbs can be used as auxiliary verbs to create advanced tenses. So as auxiliary verbs, they just help the main verb and they help us communicate what the main verb does, what it's trying to say. Now we're going to move on. Here we have a table. It has the forms of the verbs come and yam in the present simple tense. So of course, these are going to be in the simplest possible tense, which we call koha attachment. We don't call them tenses, we call them times, because they represent at what time in history the event is happening. Like if it's happening right now, or if it just happens on a daily basis, but still, right now, it's in the present simple tense, koha attachment. So before we begin with the exact verb forms, we're going to go over the personal pronouns. So the thing is, the personal pronouns can be identified by what we call veta, which shows the person. Like in English, we say first person, second person, third person. But just because we say person doesn't mean we're talking about a human being. It could also be an animal, it could be an object. It just shows what we're referring to. For example, the first person is always the speaker. The speaker can either be one person or a lot of people. It could be one or two or more. So if it's one person, then the number, which we call numri, the number is singular. So one person, it's singular. Beta par, njëjës. First person, singular. Then you also have the plural form, ne. So the speaker, as in me, and a bunch of people that are around that I'm also referring to. So I'm referring to myself and a bunch of other people. This is vetai par shumas, first person plural. Okay? So following this rule, we can move on to the second person. The second person is always the person that the speaker is talking to. Like the person that's taking part in the communication but isn't speaking in the sentence that we're talking about. Like if I say sentence, I'm saying it to someone, right? Then that's the second person. So the second person is singular and the second person plural, unlike in English, in Albanian they're different. So we have ti, which is the singular form, and you, which is the plural form. So you almost sounds exactly like you, so they're similar. So you should remember that the form that's similar is the plural one. So the person I'm talking to and a bunch of other people. I'm talking to a bunch of people, right? So that's plural. You should remember that they're all different. Also, something you should remember about these two is something special that we have in Albanian. It's the fact that if you talk to an authority, you don't know this because most of you are English speakers and you use you and you don't know the difference between the singular and plural of the second person. If you're talking to an authority, you don't use the singular form. You don't use this here. You use this one here. You as in you, a bunch of people, except you're talking to one person, right? I know that's weird, but it's a way to show respect to an authority or just someone older than you, someone you respect, but not someone close to you. It's usually for people in a higher position and far away from you in social norms. However, when you refer to these people when talking to someone else and they're in the third person, then you're going to refer to them in the third person singular because they're one person. You're not talking directly to them. So now we're going to move on to the third person, since we mentioned it. The third person singular, or veta tret njëjes, is either said ai or ajo. So we have the masculine version and the feminine version. Ai is equivalent to he, and ajo is equivalent to she. So ai and ajo when we talk about people. However, as you can see in Albanian we don't have a specific form to represent it. When we say it, we refer to objects or animals or anything non-human. However, in Albanian we don't have a specific word for this. We just use ai or ajo based on the noun's gender, right? So something you should know about Albanian, nouns have genders and you need to memorize the genders, but there's a really easy way to tell what the gender of a noun is, so more on that later. I'm going to do that in a later video. We're not quite there yet. So for example, we're going to say Chen. Chen means dog. Chen is a masculine noun, which is why we're going to say ai when we're talking about the dog. Ai Chen. However, when we say ai-chen, it's not a personal pronoun anymore. But more on that later. Or cat, matse, aio-matse, because that's feminine. Okay? Then we're going to move on to how we actually say every personal pronoun, because we only said how this is in Albanian. So to say I, when you're talking about yourself, you say un. So make sure not to pronounce the at the end too much, but make sure that it is there, especially when you're writing. There are a lot of people who omit it and just write without the They completely erase the Like imagine if you saw it like this, it looks wrong. Well, it does if you're trained to see it in the right way. And there are a lot of people who also make the horrible mistake of saying una. It's it's something associated with dialect and it's wrong. Don't say it, no matter where you hear it. You're going to hear it in a lot of videos. Then we have ti, you in singular. Ai or ayo, ne, you, ata or ato. Also, something else you should know about the third person plural is that it's also gendered. So while in English it's just they, whether they're men or women, boys or girls, just males or females, it's the same. However, in Albanian, we have them different. Ata is the masculine version, nato is the feminine version. So you're going to say, well, we don't always have groups of only males or groups of only females, right? We can just refer to to a group of people where there are males and females. Like, there are both genders in the same group. I mean, that's very common. Well, in that case, you're going to use the masculine version because it's the default. Now we're going to move on to the exact forms. So as you can see, I've made this part here black. That's because it doesn't follow the same rule as the other ones. This rule is only for the verbs kam and yam. It doesn't remain the same for other verbs. So we're going to be talking about other verbs, regular verbs, and then irregular verbs later in another video. We're not quite there yet. So the thing here is, since these are irregular verbs, they change their forms completely, and you can see that here at the yam verb. But first we're going to begin with kam. Okay, so we have kam. Un kam. I have. Ti ke. You have. Ai or ayo ka. He, she, or it has. Ne kemi. We have. You kenni. You have. Ata or ato can. They have. So as you can see, have in English doesn't change, and it only changes here when we say has. However, in Albanian, we have different forms for every single personal pronoun, except in some cases where there's a special type of verb. However, today we're talking about kam and jam. So now, as you can see, then we have un jam, I am, ti je, you are, ai or ajo, është, he, she, or it is. We are, or ne jemi, ju jeni, you are, as in you a lot of people, and ata or ato janë, they are. Okay? So as you can see here, the ones I've labeled red, there's a connection between them. When we have kam and jam, ke and je, as you can see, the only thing that changes is the transforms into an e. The first letter remains the same, right? And the same thing here, yam, ye, e. So the only thing that changes between kam and yam for every personal pronoun, well, not every personal pronoun, you can see the black one here, is the first letter, ka and yeah, that's what makes them different. Then we have the third person singular, which is very different. Okay, I'm going to circle this. Give me a minute. Make sure to notice this. So you have ka, ayo, ka, ka. So just a K and an A after it. However, for the verb jam, it's completely unrecognizable. Është. A lot of people say është, and that's fine, but you shouldn't write it është. You should write it është, as it is here. Okay, I've already said that people omit us, and that's a horrible mistake. We're here to promote learning the Albanian language as it is, as it should be, the standardized version, not the version that people make because it's easier for them. And well, I won't really blame them because it's not an easy language, but it is if it's your first language. So basically, është. If you don't think it's unrecognizable, then try seeing it in a sentence away from all of these without knowing that it is the verb jam. Next. Here we have the uses of the verb jam. So something I may have mentioned earlier is the fact that the verbs jam and kam have multiple uses. They're not just used in one context or with one exact meaning. The meaning changes based on the sentence. So we use the verb jam to describe something. In this case, we use the form jam in any form, person, number, or tense, plus a noun, which we call emmer, an adjective, which we call be-emmer, a pronoun, which we call per-emmer, etc. I've labeled it etc. There aren't many others, but they're things that we can't associate with English. Like, for example, you have nouns in English, you have adjectives in English, you have pronouns in English, but you don't have the rest of them. I mean, you may have one of them, but you don't have the other, which is why I haven't put it there, okay? So when I say to describe something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like say that thing's beautiful, or that thing's cute, or that thing's ugly, or that thing's stupid, or that person. Like you can describe a person, an animal, or an object, or anything. Like it can be anything. But the way you describe it, you can just say what it is, how it is, or just refer to it in a way. So you describe something by what it is or how it is. For example, here we have an example, un jam nxënës, or un jam nxënëse. So as I said earlier, nouns have genders, which is why I put both versions here. Nxënës is the masculine version, and nxënëse is the feminine version. A lot of nouns that end with e are feminine, but you should be careful because there are also verbs that end with e, and you do not want to confuse those. So we have un, which is the word we already know, jam, which is also a word we already know, and then this is your new word, okay? So remember that nxënës means male student, and nxënëse means female student. Nxënëse, nxënës, and nxënëse. So as you can see here, we have the example where we don't describe how the student is. We don't say that person's good or that person's smart. We just say that's a student. It's still describing something, okay? Now we're going to move on to the second use, to show existence or being. So basically we just show that something is, it exists in real life. We don't say anything about it or comment on its appearance or its character. We just say that it exists. We acknowledge its existence. So the form is yam in any form, person, number, or tense, plus a place generally. So for example, jemi në shkollë. Jemi, as we said earlier, is the form for the first person plural. So we are. And then we have these two words, which you probably don't recognize unless you've had a bit of Albanian earlier, but they're basic words. It means at school. This thing here, në, means at in this context, but in other contexts it could have a different meaning. Still, it has the same meaning in Albanian, just the translation to English is different. So, jemi në shkollë. We are at school. So we exist at school. We're not doing anything. We're not describing anything about ourselves. We are. That's it. Nothing else. And we can also use it as an auxiliary verb, which is something we're going to learn later on. Like we're going to learn it concretely, and we're actually going to use it. But for now, it's just theory. You're not going to use this yet. It's for a higher level of language learning. So the form jam plus main verb. So since jam is the auxiliary verb, it's going to help transcend meaning to the main verb, which is always in the past participle. So jam plus past participle. The example we have down here is ai është zgjedhur si president. He has been chosen as president. Ai has been chosen, është zgjedhur. Okay, this probably doesn't make any sense right now, but it will in a later lesson, which is why I'm not explaining it this early, because you're still learning the basic forms of the verbs and you're not going to understand this. Well, you might, but it's a lot of information. Si president, as president. Okay? So this noun sounds similar to the English version because a lot of words, as I've said in the last video, have been derived from other languages. The cultures of many countries have had their impact on us, and we've taken a lot of words from them, which we use every day, and that's still a problem with Albanian language. Of course, we have our own words, but we also use words from other countries. We've taken them. We haven't stolen them. We're just borrowing them. So, since this is an auxiliary verb, if we take out the main verb, it's not going to make any sense. So let's try it. Ai është si president. It does make sense if you really think about it, but it doesn't make sense in the way we want it to. It's not giving us the meaning we want it to. Like, ai është si president means he is like a president. We're not saying he is like a president. We're saying he has been chosen as president. Our opinion on that is irrelevant. We're just talking about the fact that he has been chosen as president. That's it. That's what we're trying to convey. We're not trying to tell people what we think about his behavior and whether he deserves that role. So remember that if you take out the main verb, it's going to have a very different meaning. Let's move on to the uses of the verb come. So first, of course, we use this to express possession. So something you have. The form is come in any form, person, number, or tense, plus a noun, which we call emmer, or a noun collocation, which we call group emmer. A noun collocation is basically just a group of words where a noun is involved. So here's an example. Ken je laps? Do you have a pencil? In this case, we have a noun collocation because it's a and pencil. A pencil. It's not just pencil. So do you have a pencil? That's a noun collocation because it's a noun plus another word. And here we're saying, do you have a pencil? Which is the structure. This here is a structure of a question, which we haven't learned yet. Here is far simpler than the structure in English, but we're going to learn it. Okay? So also, we're going to move on to the use as an auxiliary verb, and then I'm going to tell you something about verbs in Albanian, all verbs, not just these two. It's a basic thing. So the form come in any form, person, number, or tense plus main verb in the past participle as it was earlier when we used the verb jam. Example, kemi bërë shumë ushtrime. We have done a lot of exercises. So we said we have done, right? Kemi means we have done it. And bër, done. So have done. We have done a lot of exercises. Now, if we take out the main verb, as we did earlier, we'll see how the meaning changes. Kemi shumë ushtrime. We have a lot of exercises. That's not the meaning we're trying to transcend, is it? That's not what we're trying to convey. We have a lot of exercises. I mean, if you say we have a lot of exercises, that means I have a lot of exercises to do and I'm just too lazy to do it. We're too lazy to do these exercises. But if we say we've done a lot of exercises, it means we're hardworking and we actually managed to complete a lot of exercises. So the meaning completely changes and so does the mood. Now, something I was going to tell you about the verbs jam and kam before we move on to the conclusions of this video is, well, not just jam and kam, every single verb in Albanian. Unlike in English, we don't need the personal pronoun to show us who we're talking about because, as you know, the verb form changes for every personal pronoun. So you can tell from the form of the verb who you're talking about, which is why in Albanian, we don't need personal pronouns or a name, or we don't need to show who we're talking about. We just need the verb. For example, here, "Can you laps?" We don't have T anywhere here, like you. Do you have a pencil? You can tell it's you because ke. You don't have the e at the end for anything else. Now I'm going to move on to the conclusions. First, the verbs kam and jam are irregular verbs, which we call folje të pareguta. This means they take unique forms which can't be traced to a specific morphological rule. Moving on. The verbs kam and jam have multiple uses, which makes them different from other verbs. They can be used as auxiliary verbs, which are called folje ndihmëse, in advanced tenses. The verbs kam and jam don't make sense on their own. Even when a contextual tool isn't present, it is either indicated beforehand or extremely obvious. In Albanian, the form of a verb changes for every personal pronoun. These pronouns are recognized by the person, which we call veta, and the number, which we call numri. We use the same pronouns for everything: people, objects, animals, etc. So that was it for today. Thank you for your attention, or as we say in Albanian, faleminderit për vëmendjen tuaj. I will see you in the next video, the next lesson, which I promise is going to be a vocabulary one. We're going to learn a bunch of words, and you're actually going to be able to construct simple sentences using the verbs kam and jam and a few other words that you're going to learn there. So, see you next time. Bye.